started with one of my favorite diagrams, and it's an image with hopefully a pretty clear message and lots of lovely colors, and it helps to explain why I do what I do, why Treeconomy does what it does, and why it's important. And it's a message you've probably already deciphered if you can see this slide okay. And what is being expressed here is the fundamental nature of nature. It's a diagram that the Stockholm Resilience Institute produced as part of their exercise in mapping the interdependencies and hierarchies across the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And what it shows is that a functioning biosphere, our wild spaces, a balanced climate, water, really form the foundation of everything, and that we don't have a hope of addressing our societal and economic issues if we aren't investing in nature and in our biosphere. And invest we must. A lot of money, in fact, around 700 billion. That's the figure that the United Nations Environmental Program and Paulson Institute tell us we need to be putting into nature, protecting and restoring nature each year if we're going to avoid the worst consequences of climate change and ecological breakdown. So it's a lot of money, and to date, private sources haven't really ponied up. Only about 14% of all money invested in nature today is from private sources. It's primarily government-led, and so we need to start to take advantage of the market-based mechanisms that may exist for us to address this nature funding gap. And I hear you say, well, what about voluntary carbon markets? Well, they're small today, about 2 billion globally, but growing rapidly, and they could hold promise in closing some of this nature funding gap. Doing it again. But as many of us here probably know, this is often what we get when it comes to nature-based carbon offsetting. We see offsets funding projects like these around the world consisting of single species, commercial monoculture plantations that, when you get under the canopy, are really biodiversity deserts. And so we're funding trees, but maybe not funding nature. We're certainly not funding functioning ecosystems. And that's something that desperately needs to change. We've got a problem of measurement. It's right here, not this guy, but what he's demonstrating, which is that the tools we use to measure, monitor the climate benefit of nature-based projects like those reforestation efforts I showed in the prior slide, it's pretty antiquated. You walk around maybe every 5-10 years, sample the girth of a couple trees, and then make some pretty broad and error-ridden extrapolations about the total amount of carbon that's in the forest. And fundamentally, that undermines trust, transparency, and undermines efforts by corporates and well-meaning nature investors to put money towards projects that are making a greater difference than the ones we see on the market today. And so tape measures might have worked for those plantations, but what about this? I mean, what we've got pictured here is natural regeneration. These are areas, these are pictures of projects around the world where nature has been allowed to lead. It's fundamental part of efforts to rewild, embracing a process-led approach for nature restoration rather than an input-led approach for nature restoration, aka tree planting. But imagine trying to make sense of this wonderful mess with a tape measure and instill confidence in the climate and hopefully biodiversity benefits that these sorts of projects are realizing. You can't do it. We don't have the technology for it, or at least we haven't for quite some time. And so wonderfully charismatic, but crucially biodiversity boosting and carbon sequestering projects like these, they don't have a home on the voluntary carbon market. And so that is where we come in. So Treeconomy uses Earth observation, remote sensing, computer vision to make sense of nature and to better quantify carbon that's being sequestered, not just in conventional reforestation projects, but also in these sort of messier natural regeneration, rewilding projects that we'd like to see more of. And then we bring that into a platform to the benefit of project developers, nature investors, even corporate carbon credit buyers, so they can have confidence in what they're funding. And we recently had the opportunity, to do it in this beautiful place, to apply our technology here. And this is an image from the NEP estate, which many of you in the audience may have heard of. It's probably the UK and I would reckon one of the world's most famous rewilding initiatives, where hundreds of hectares of formerly intensively farmed land in Sussex were allowed to naturally regenerate. So it was taken out of rotation and recolonized with vegetation, and not just trees and scrub and hedgerows as they extended across the landscape, but an abundance of life. And so in 2 short decades, Knepp has become a site of national significance for nature, and is home to a number of nationally threatened and priority species. And so we've been working with them for a little while to try to make sense of this glorious mess, this dynamic, scrubby mosaic, what it's doing for the planet, so that hopefully we can connect it to markets and see more and more Knepps get funded around the world. And so we brought our technology to bear, flying a drone and performing 3D sensing across the landscape there to better understand what's actually happening and how much carbon's crucially been sequestered by this natural regeneration over 20 years. And I'm very pleased to announce we recently launched a report in collaboration with Knepp, their sister company Nattergal, Arup, and another great UK climate tech, Agricarbon, who measured the soil carbon component. And in the report, we summarize our findings, which unsurprisingly confirm the major climate benefits of natural regeneration projects. And we've also demonstrated the use of remote sensing technology to take account of those benefits. And if we can continually and reliably take account of these climate benefits using remote sensing techniques like the ones we've shown, we're really laying the foundation for these much wilder projects to find a home on the voluntary carbon market and to find the money they need to get established and to grow over time. And so if we can do that, we're leveraging technology to help finance, help nature, and hopefully realize a world and a carbon market that funds less of this and more of this. Thanks very much.